Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Brian. That's Ryan, Brian Houston, Ryan Peterson, and we are recording on June the 29th as the towering inferno that is East Texas continues to blaze forward. How you doing, sir?
Good. Our AC, we were having problems with our air conditioning last week. We got it fixed. It was the worst time to have it start going out.
It never goes out in the wintertime. It always goes out like middle of July. Has to.
Yeah.
It's a bottom line thing. So let's get right into it. College World Series has been fantastic, first of all. Probably one of the most entertaining College World Series I've seen when you talk about the entire 18 field. And now you've got Vanderbilt and Mississippi State in an all SEC championship series, and Vandy's up 1-0 and could wrap it up as we record prior to game two. But I got to tell you, on Saturday morning when I woke up, and looked at my phone and saw that North Carolina State had been sent home because of COVID. I was pretty blown away. I wanted to get your impressions. I've got some thoughts. Go for it.
I didn't like it. I feel like because look, I was shocked. You're thinking we're kind of past this kind of stuff now, and for that to happen to me was pretty shocking. I really do feel for the student athletes. I think my biggest problem with the whole thing is I don't feel a whole lot of common sense has been put into that decision, because I just don't understand. Now, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I know that the rules stated the testing policy if you were not vaccinated. But what I don't understand is if players that were already vaccinated from NC State were tested, why are you testing players without symptoms that are vaccinated? And if they were tested, then why are the Vandy players not tested? It makes no sense to me why you test vaccinated players on one team and not the other. And you can say, well, they're not on the same team as NC State had guys that weren't vaccinated. Okay, but they were all still on the same field together for extended period of time. So it doesn't make any sense to me why you would throw the team out, and that for having failed tests, and then you wouldn't test the other teams. Like, I just don't understand that logic. And if being vaccinated is such a big deal and it's the end of all this, then how do you explain 4 players that were vaccinated testing positive? I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my brain around all that.
I will say this. The rule book was clear on the protocols, and every team that came to the World Series had the same rule book. And NC State was the only team that's had COVID problems. Okay. And then they've made it very clear that some of their players had made the decision not to get vaccinated. So from that standpoint, when you have a hard time making a case to defend yourself if you chose not to get vaccinated. And man, Twitter blew up, of course, like it always does, into a huge fist fight. And it's like, these kids have the freedom to make their decision. Yes, they do. They also have the freedom to get on a bus and get sent back home when stuff like this happens. So I struggle with, I hate the fact that they had to go home. I hate that. Okay, let me make that perfectly clear. And I hate the fact that they did, because they were so hot. They seemed to be the Cinderella team of the tournament. They played with 14 players in the game on Friday and dang near beat Kumar Rocker and Vanderbilt anyway, with a pitcher playing first base and getting 3 hits in the game. So obviously they're scrappy. They are a great baseball team. It's a shame. They probably would have lost in the second game if they were still shorthanded, and they may have been more shorthanded. Saying all of that, it's just another clear example of what a really crappy job the NCAA does with communication. because we still have never heard the whole story. We still have never really gotten a full explanation why the kids were sent home. The fact that they made the announcement at 2 o'clock in the morning was ridiculous. Why didn't you have a news conference first thing Saturday morning and talk about this? How much effort was made in trying to figure out if there was a way to make this work. The other thing that always happens in the College World Series is rain delays and rainouts and stuff. So when you know that games could get pushed back, could you maybe have pushed back a game or two? Would that have helped? I don't know what went on behind closed doors. I don't know what discussions were had there. I agree with you on the common sense part of this, that the NCAA, they have perfected ways to make themselves look horrible. Okay. They, PR wise, they are the how-to manual into not do things right. Okay. They suck. At everything they do, they suck. But having said that, again, all the other teams followed the protocols. North Carolina State chose not to. And so there's some of that they've got to bear some of that responsibility. I mean, it stinks for everybody.
Well, the only thing I would push back on, though, you say they agreed on the protocols. These student athletes didn't agree on anything. They were forced. They were forced to do this.
No, they weren't forced. You don't have to play.
No, if you want to play in the College World Series, you are.
That's a decision.
And then also to demonize kids that don't want to get the vaccine, I think is completely unfair. I have been vaccinated. So look, I'm vaccinated, but having said that, I had concerns about the vaccine. And when studies come out showing that there's heart problems for teenagers and young adults with this vaccine, and then just to blindly say, well, you have to do this, or these rules are going to be forced against you at the College World Series, I think is wrong. And again, it makes no sense to say, what I understand testing the guys that haven't been vaccinated. I do not understand why you're testing vaccinated players. Then why isn't every guy on every team vaccinated? I mean, that's been vaccinated, tested. Why is one team have players vaccinated, tested, and the rest of them don't? That doesn't make any sense. Then what's the point of the vaccine?
Now, I will say, I didn't demonize anybody, but what I did say was that everybody involved in the World Series has choices. Okay. You can choose to do what you want to do. The rule book was clear. That's all I'm trying to say. And so every team that was involved had to follow those same rules. What if they chose not to get vaccinated, that's fine. But you also may be choosing to not play. I'm just saying that those kinds of things, those are issues. The whys of why the NCAA does what they do, I have no idea. I mean, because again, they're never consistent in their thinking. But I will tell you this, Ryan, watch how this went down this week, because it could happen in football season. And when it does happen in football season, it's not going to be like last year, where if you get a group of people that get tested, and they're not going to push a game back or reschedule a game. You're just going to take a forfeit or get sent home like North Carolina State did. People better understand that this is coming if, they continue to do things the way they're doing them right now. And then I get the argument too, where they're saying, well, why is it that you can hold this team to this standard, but you got 25,000 people in the stands with no masks, no protocols, no anything. I mean, the only thing I can answer there is it may be just an NCAA liability issue. They can't control what the fans do, but they do have responsibility and culpability over, if this, unfortunately, because we live in a litigious society, let's say somebody on one of these teams did get sick, got somebody else sick, somebody died. Now you got people coming after the NCAA wanting to sue them. I mean, look, the whole thing's a nightmare, and I'm not saying they're not right or wrongs. It just stinks for everybody involved.
And I was not suggesting that you were demonizing
It's
them.
okay. It's all right.
No, because I wasn't suggesting you were, but they were demonized by a lot of people because I
True.
was reading it
But you,
on social media. And I don't
oh,
think it's fair
it's
when
not.
people start telling other people what they should be doing with their body and what they should be concerned or not concerned about. I honestly, if I had a child that age, I would, I don't know how comfortable I would be them getting the vaccine. Within that age group, they're much
Yeah.
they're much more likely, if they get COVID, there's not even going to be any symptoms. And if they do have COVID, they're not going to be that sick. Um, as opposed to putting something in their body that, for some of these young adults, it's been bad for their heart. So, I mean, I'm just saying, and again, it wasn't you. It's
No,
this like these guys. Well, they made the choice, and this is what they get, sort of thing. I was reading, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's fair. And like you said, this was all put in place obviously beforehand, before the tournament started. I guess my problem is there's no common sense in how this was put together, because if any players that were already vaccinated, I don't understand, regardless of if you had teammates, why you had to get tested. Because my thing was, if guys on NC State ended up testing positive that had been vaccinated, what makes you think that there's no chance that anyone else on these other teams
yeah.
haven't been vaccinated? And if none of these kids are showing symptoms, why are we testing them? If you've been vaccinated and you're showing no symptoms, why are we testing you? Other than we're just going to be scared and act crazy about this for the rest of our lives.
And the
It just doesn't make
debates,
a whole lot of sense to me.
debates over the validity of vaccinations are not can go on forever, and people will politicize it. The one thing that did really piss me off were the morons that were calling out Vanderbilt like they were the bad guys in this thing.
Oh,
Vanderbilt did nothing.
no.
You know, their coach has a reputation for being about as squeaky clean and upstanding as any guy on the planet. And to suggest that he was calling for additional testing for NC State was
Oh, is that
ridiculous.
what people were
Oh,
saying?
the Twitter fools were all over
Yeah.
the place. And they were killing Vanderbilt. It was like, you know, because Vanderbilt won. They, you know, they're all of a sudden, go figure. Vanderbilt is like Alabama. What? You know? So it's ridiculous. I agree. It's a complete cluster on everybody's level. I mean, I think that the coach at North Carolina State needed to make it real clear to his players what the consequences could be if you found yourself in a situation where, because we'd already seen it. We'd seen VCU get sent home from the NCAA basketball team. We saw teams get sent. We saw teams get sent home from the hockey Final Four, the Frozen Four. I mean, we've seen this throughout. It's not like it's something new.
I
Okay.
do wonder, you had brought it up, and I had saw someone else bring it up, and would would they truly be willing to do that for a college football playoff game?
No chance. No
Yeah.
chance. Too much money on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, it would. Let me just put it this way. There's no way somebody would have been sent home unless it was just rampant.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm talking about like 4 position groups.
Yeah.
You know, and as it was, Ohio State played shorthanded on the defensive line in the semifinals. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, we already knew that they had big holes in their lineup, but there's no way the game would have gotten canceled.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have happened. All right, so Vanderbilt, Mississippi State are in the finals. That's the other thing that drives people crazy, I'm sure, is it's an all SEC finals, so that makes everybody mad. But again, Greg Sankey didn't do this. Vanderbilt didn't do this. They didn't have anything to do with it. It's, you know, it just stinks for North Carolina State. I hate it for those kids. It's a terrible way to end your year. All right, moving on. We had some major news with the Dallas Mavericks, as not only do they try to patch up the dumpster fire that had become their front office, but also try to make some PR moves at the same time to maybe, you know, appease their fans. One of them I like, the other one I'm not real convinced is going to work, and that's going to be Jason Kidd being named the coach. That bothers me. It makes me nervous because his tenure as a coach, both in Milwaukee and with the Nets, was not good. And in both
Right.
cases, he lost the locker room. So I'm just wondering if he lost the locker room in both situations. A, what kind of coach is he? If this is a guy that's supposed to be coming in primarily to guide Luka. Now, Nico Harrison, who comes in from Nike, and, of course, we all know the players don't play for the teams, they play for shoe companies. That's where they
Right.
make all their money. So this guy knows every player. He knows all the shoe companies. I could see where he may be able to do what Donnie and Rick Carlisle and Cuban have never been able to do, and that's attract big money free agents to Dallas. They just will not come here. I've seen so many times Cuban just stockpiling money, keeping the powder dry, so to speak, so he could go out and get a Giannis, so he could go out and get whoever it was that he wanted to get, and never even got a sniff. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the kid hire makes sense because of the connection with the Mavericks. He won a championship there with Dirk, but his coaching resume is not good. And if you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, for example, his last head coaching gig, the Bucks didn't become elite until after he left. So do I think the Mavericks are in better hands than they were what was a couple weeks ago? I do not. I do think, the front office, there needed to be a shakeup. I'm okay with that. But I think I don't know. Look, maybe it'll work out. But I just don't. Jason Kidd has not proven to be a good NBA head coach. And
The thing that bugged me,
I don't feel like, and I know this wasn't Cuban did not, at least I don't think Cuban did not want to replace Carlisle. But the argument is always if you're going to replace the coach, you need to have someone better. And I don't think they got anyone better. I don't think Jason Kidd's even close to being better.
I don't either. It's obvious that, and you hear the argument with NBA people that coaching in the NBA is not as important as having some kind of relationship with your players, which may be true. I mean, You don't see there ain't a ton of John Woodens on the bench in the NBA these days. Name really great coaches that are still playing right now. Pop's about the only great coach still left in the NBA. Carlisle's a great coach, but those guys, you're seeing fewer and fewer of those old school basketball coaches. You're seeing a lot more of the new generation. I mean, Chauncey Billups being a candidate to be a coach, or former players, because they can communicate with the players, because everybody runs the same thing. They run the pick and roll or they shoot it from half court. It's not genius basketball.
Yeah, it's a lot of isolation basketball with your superstar. And I don't know, maybe they think this is about Jason Kidd's relationship with Luka.
I'm sure
what they hope that and it's not even about the coaching. But again, a roster that lacks the talent that the Mavericks roster does, I just don't see Jason Kidd bringing out the best in a roster that needs a big influx of talent to go with Luka.
And the other thing that concerns me about Jason Kidd is that if you're going to give a guy like Kidd the job, he needs to have somebody on his bench that is an experienced bench coach that's more of an X's and O's guys. And so far, the names I've seen mentioned for assistant coaches are Jet Terry and JJ Barea.
We're just bringing back the old 06 team.
and of course, because Dirk is on hand now as a special advisor, and Michael Finley is going to be the new president of basketball operations. Well, that's great, but none of those guys has X's and O's experience when it comes to actually coaching a team. I mean, when Larry Bird took over the Pacers, he hired Rick Carlisle to be his bench coach.
And that was a great combination. Yeah.
It was terrific, and it was the best days the Indiana Pacers have had. You look at one of the things that bugs me about Kidd is that he had Lawrence Frank as his bench coach, and chose him specifically to be his bench coach, and then within about 2 months, literally would kick him out of the gym.
Yeah,
couldn't get along with him, and I mean, this was his handpicked man for X's and O's, and I'm going, okay, well, so what is the deal here with this guy? Is he just a tyrant? I mean, obviously he was a great player, And obviously the guys on the Mavericks organization all respect him for what his hand in the championship. But that doesn't make you automatically a great coach, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Luka's going to listen to you.
No, I think it's a great point, and I've never been a big fan of his as a head coach. I think he's been an okay assistant coach.
He brings a lot of baggage too from a personal
But yeah,
standpoint.
he brings a ton of baggage, and I think the most concerning thing is what you had said about, he hires Frank. It's his hire. And then, he starts kicking him out of practice. And then he's like insubordination. And it's like, is this just a matter of a guy that doesn't want anyone to question anything he does or hold him accountable? Or, he just wants a bunch of yes men to tell him what he wants to hear.
Well, that sounds like what Mark Cuban's done in terms of putting his team together, his front office team.
Yep.
Because
it'll be interesting to see what happens, but they're definitely trying to bring back that 06 championship flavor. They can't play, but they're going to be everywhere else.
The only new face coming in from outside is Nico Harrison. And I don't know, he knows how to get along with people, and he knows how to get them, make them rich. Can he attract them? First of all, do you know how to put a roster together?
Yeah.
Does Finley know how to put a roster together? All these guys are great. Were great players. Michael Finley, Dirk Nowitzki, and Jason Kidd, probably 3 of the 4 best players to ever put on Mavericks uniforms. But that does not make you a brain trust capable of putting a team together. Now, I guess, we've seen Morley with the Rockets putting it together with analytics and things like that. Maybe that's the road they're going down. I don't know. It's different, but I don't know if it's better.
Yeah, I don't think it's better, at least not yet. They have to prove that.
One last thing, just the mere fact that we are sitting here, it's the end of June, and we are literally about 5-6 weeks away from training camp, NFL training camp, and we may actually see football. Cowboys will be headed off to Oxnard, which we never thought was going to happen. So you getting excited. I already got Dave Campbell's Texas football, so I've been immersed in that. Can't wait for Phil Steele's magazine to come out so I can soak up the college game and see how all that goes. But I'm ready.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing leading up, because it's going to kind of be another 5-6 weeks of dead time, and then it'll start ratcheting up. It's going to be interesting to see, as we get closer, if anything happens with Aaron Rodgers. I think that's the one storyline we're all kind of waiting and seeing. Is he going to be willing to sit out? Are the Packers going to call his bluff? Would they ever actually decide they're going to trade him? I know the NFL, obviously, they're definitely going to want Rodgers playing, if it's not in Green Bay, somewhere. But that's, to me, the big storyline is what's going to happen there, because I think it's a huge story when you talk about the NFC and the AFC, because if they do trade him, or if he doesn't report, Green Bay is no longer a contender. And all of a sudden, because I think the story has been, if Rodgers leaves the NFC, like Tom Brady's like licking his chops, he's like, we can make another run. But I think for the Cowboys, it's also kind of a big story, because if Aaron Rodgers leaves, you start thinking, if you're the Cowboys and the talent that they have, if Dak's back and healthy, if their defense gets better, how many teams in the NFC are you really afraid of? I know the Bucs are the defending champs, but I just think it can change the whole landscape. It can make the AFC much more tougher if Rodgers goes there, much more difficult, or will he stay? It's going to be interesting, because I think, yes, we're all focused on Aaron Rodgers, what he's going to do, but I think it will have ramifications for the whole league and both conferences in terms of what the regular season and the playoffs could look like as well.
And we know that you're sitting there praying every night.
Oh, you absolutely know.
You want him in Denver so bad. You want Peyton Manning 3.0, man. You want Elway, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers. Just remember.
Although I do not think it will happen. I think it would just. I don't know what I would do, but I would lose it if that happened.
And we will have a podcast that day if that does happen. The day it's announced, I'm getting you on recorded.
Of me doing backflips and all.
Pretty much. I want to see gymnastics. Yes, I want to see Simone. All right, man. Hey, listen, be sure and watch the podcast and leave nice comments, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We will step it up and talk a little bit more about the NBA finals when we know who the teams are that are still standing. I do want to talk about in the future the issue of the umpires cracking down on substances on the baseball
Oh man,
and the
we should have
reaction.
talked about that today.
Yeah,
That's
we'd be here till 9 tonight, so I don't want to do that. But Ryan, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week.
yes, sir.
All right, I'm Bryan. That's Ryan. And again, hope you enjoyed it, and be sure and tune in next week. You never know what's going to happen around here. Have a good one.